I went to my first vintage book convention. Hi, welcome to Garage Geek. If you didn't already know, I went to a vintage book convention. I've been talking about it on my channel for a while, so you're probably sick of it already. So good thing I went and it's over with. So now you won't have to hear about it again, except for this video. It started at 9 in the morning and it ended at 4. I just got home a little while ago. I think I left around 2. I didn't get there till about 10:30, I think. I wanted to go when it opened, but I'm glad I didn't, because there weren't that many people there. That was one of the reasons I didn't want to go initially. Although there were more people coming toward the end or in the middle of it. As I suspected, people started having more discounts as I was leaving, and I bet if I had stayed until 4, there would have been even more discounts. So when I pull in, as I suspected, they charged $6 for parking. It wasn't that big a deal, but I would prefer if they would just say that as part of the entrance fee, because as you pull in, they charge you for parking. And I looked on the webpage, it didn't have that anywhere. And on the booth, it said cash only, and it was $6. And they also had a sign, no bill over a 10. Well, I was there early and I pulled in and I said, oh, I didn't know about parking and I only have a $20 bill. He was like, that's okay. And so he was able to make change, but I bet later in the day that would have been difficult. After I parked, I walked around the whole place, even though it was a pretty small convention. It only cost $10 to get in. So I knew right then and there it wouldn't be that big. I was very impressed with the different types of materials that were there. So there were, of course, vintage paperbacks, but there were also comics and magazines, lots of pulps. In fact, I need to make a list of all my pulps, because there was one person selling pulps and they were half off the sticker prices, and a lot of them were $1 and $2. So that would have been a good time to fill in some gaps, because I do have a bunch of pulps already. So the first table that I went to, that I stopped at, because I walked around the whole place. I was taking pictures, as you'll see on the screen. But the first one that I stopped at was this person had just stacks of old comics, not in bags. And so I went up and I started looking at them, and a lot of them were, like Silver Age. They weren't in the best condition because they were just on the table, not even in bags and boards. So after looking through them a little bit, I finally asked, how are these priced? And he's like, oh, you have to open up the cover, and they're written on the inside in the corner, like very faintly. And so I was going through them. I got a whole bunch, but then I put a bunch back. I wanted to limit myself, because I was at a vintage paperback book fair after all, and I didn't want to spend all my money on comics. Oh, by the way, I wanted to limit myself, so I only took $200 in cash. And I actually stuck to that, except for I can't think of the word, except for one time that I didn't. At that table, I pulled out all these comics, and the gentleman had left, and there was a woman there, and I went up to her and I'm like, oh, I got $38. I just want something, to round it up to 20, so that it'll be easier, to give you just two $20 bills. There were a bunch of vintage paperback books there, and they were the kind that weren't in bags. And she's like, oh, I bet we can find something on this shelf. And she said, you know what? There were like 3 shelves worth. There were a lot of nice ones. She's like, just go ahead and pick one, and that'll be your 40. And so I picked this one. It was called The Flesh Baron. And this is Lust and Money Bought Anything for the Flesh Baron by John Dexter. And this is an evening reader. And when I opened it up, it was actually marked $15. She's like, you know what, that's okay. We'll just round it up for your 40. It's fine. I'm worried. Am I going to start reading this, and is it going to be like Gary, the Casual Comic Guy's book that he just published? Fun cover. I grabbed that one. But let me go ahead and show you the comics that I bought, even though this was a vintage book fair. So there was, remember, I got all of these plus this book for $40. So you let me know if I got a good deal. I mostly got Jimmy Olsen's. I got this Jimmy Olsen. I got that Jimmy Olsen. Another Jimmy Olsen. And like I said, the quality, like, they're not the greatest shape, but they're not horrible either. There were some that are all beat up. This one, I love this cover. Here, I got a checkerboard one. It seemed like all the checkerboard ones were more expensive, but this one was only for $2. But you could see it's got a subscription fold down the center. I don't normally buy these. I don't like them too much, But this one was a reprint of Superboy #1. And I figured I'm never going to have that, and until they do a proper facsimile issue, that this would be a good one to have. And the interiors are beautiful. So that was only $2. Here's another Jimmy Olsen. This one is kind of looking weird. I got that for the painted cover. Look at that, gorgeous. Another one, that painted cover. This one has damage. It's ripped here, but in my life, this is going to look gorgeous. The Frogmen. Now, I have 1 or 2 issues of this, but I didn't want to pass it up. I'm not sure if I have that one or not. I should have looked it up. And then I was able to get this really thick issue of Silly Symphonies, which is the complete Disney version of Cinderella, because I loved that back as well, front and back, and the whole thing. That one was the most expensive of the bunch, $5. I think one other might have been $5. But yeah, so what do you think? I got all of those for $40, including the Flesh Baron. Just in case you want to see that. Oh, look. He's like, yeah. I was going to say that was a YouTuber, but then I thought better of it. I shouldn't do that. There's a couple of Skebe YouTubers out there. If you know Japanese, you know what I'm talking about. The next seller that I bought from, his table had everything at half off. So I went ahead and I actually spent $85 at his table. And it was where I bought the bulk of my purchases that day. So I bought all of these books plus 2 comics and a hardback. So I paid $85 for that. So again, you can tell me if you think I got a good deal. I bought this one for my husband because it was a Wonder Woman with an Alex Ross cover. So again, it says $5, but it was $2.50. So it's the same. All of these basically were $5 books. So he had a collection of Doc Savage, and I bought all the low number ones. I'll tell you what the numbers were in a second. But I love these gorgeous covers. Oh, no. This one was a Lovecraft. And it's beat up, I think, a little bit, and that's why it was cheap. But Lovecraft books are kind of hard to find. In fact, near the end, I didn't realize it, but I found a table with 2 Lovecrafts, and they were $5 each, and I was going to buy them. But then when I opened up my wallet, I realized I didn't have any money left. I had spent everything. I had to put them back, and I was on the verge of leaving when I remembered something, and I'll get to that in a bit. More Doc Savage. What do you think of these? I got a lot of Doc Savage to read, but aren't those nice covers? Painted covers. Look at that one. Wow.
So I got numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16.
Now, what I noticed at his table, that some of the higher number ones were actually had $10 cover prices. So maybe those are the rare ones, but I wanted to get them early in the run so that I could actually start reading them. Like I said, I did get 2 extra books. One was a Lovecraft. That is hilarious cover illustration. And the Wonder Woman for my husband. I got 2 more Jimmy Olsens at that table. This one was a $10 cover price. And this one is definitely, I believe that's a Neil Adams. It looks like Neil Adams. And that one was also a $10 cover price. And then I got this for $12 because remember, these things are all half off. So I got those Jimmy Olsens, I think, for $5. And so this is a beautiful PS art books. I really would like to start collecting these. So this has the first 5 issues of Forbidden Worlds. And when you open this up, I mean, it's so nice. So I really need, I've heard about these books for a while, but they collect a lot of the Golden Age stuff, and so I really need to buy more of these. I was going to get into the softies because they actually have a lot of these printed in soft cover versions. They're a lot cheaper, but I got this for $10 or $12, so I wasn't going to pass that up. All of that for $85. What do you think? Did I pay too much? So I've spent $85, $40, and $6 for parking, and $10 for entrance. Remember, I only have $200. So far that's $141. So I basically have $60 left. So at about this time, I was getting tired, so I decided to sit down, and I was looking through my bags, sending pictures to people. Obviously, it was really nice because they actually had a separate room where people could sit and eat, or just sit if you were tired. And not many of these convention places have something like that. It was very, very welcome. So at this time, I noticed that the food truck was there. They said they would only be there from 11 to 2. It was time, so I went ahead and I went outside. I got the food truck and I got a veggie burger with fries and a Coke, and it cost $21. It wasn't the worst food I've ever had, but it wasn't the best either. You're paying, so there adds another $21 to my total. So now I'm at $162. So I basically have $40 left. I did have a couple singles in my wallet. So as I was walking around, I noticed there were some books on the table, and they looked brand new, but they had the vintage look to them. So I asked the person at the table, and he was like, oh yeah, we're reprinting these. And some of these have been out of print since they first were put out. And actually we have 2 brand new ones, and one of them is a book that I wrote. I was like, wow, well then I'm definitely going to buy the one that you wrote, because, you're sitting here. And that's cool that you're doing this, so I want to support you. And so his book is called God's Hitman. And even though I didn't like the cover art too much, I wanted to support him. And I went ahead and I bought this also because I thought it was cool. And it was actually spine number 1, so I couldn't resist that. Wild Man of Mercury. And so this is a reprint by Leigh Brackett. And this comes from the Caveman Adventure Library. Now, they did have some pretty suspect titles there. I was laughing. One of them was called The Abortionist. I picked that one up and I was like, oh, what's this? And I started laughing. But anyways, if you're interested, these are put out by DocClancy.com. And you can see their advertisement is like a scantily clad woman. So there you go, DocClancy.com. He even gave stickers with that. And he went ahead and autographed mine, which was really nice. So that was a further $20. So now we're at $182. So I have $20 left. So as I was walking around, I noticed, different tables, different sales. One pretty small table had 4 for $10. And so I thought to myself, well, I only have $20 left. Let me go ahead and, use 10 here. I'll be able to get 4 if I can find 4. And I did. I found the first one I picked up was this Knocked for a Loop. Let me pull it out of here. Now, they were cheaper because they weren't in that great of a condition. But I like the cover on this. Knocked for a Loop by Craig Rice. And the guy sitting there said, hey, you know what? That's actually a pretty good book. And it's murder and kidnapping lead to a bevy of beautiful suspects and another corpse. Made for murder. So, sounded fun. The next one I picked up was You're Lonely. I said, that's strategically placed. And he was like, yeah. He was like, oh, that one's in pretty good condition for being in that box. But it does have some damage here. But fun cover. I found in that same set, I found The Thin Man by Dashiell Hammett, which is something Sleepy and I just recently read. And it's great finding these. And this is a book that I haven't read yet, but it's on my to-read list. I actually bought the modern version of this, and this is On the Beach by Neville Shute. And that's a pretty cool bottom illustration. I usually don't like books where it's mostly text, but since I knew this one, I went ahead and grabbed it. So there we have another 4 books for $10. I'm at $192. Now, for the life of me, I don't know what happened to the other 10. So I went to open up my wallet, and if I forgot something, I don't know. Like I said, I was going to get a couple of Lovecraft books, and I don't know what happened. So either I miscalculated, or I didn't get change when I was getting change at a booth, or when I bought something. Whatever, it was $10. But then I was walking out. I remembered, there was one person there that I wanted a signature from. This is a gay writer that I knew about from a long time ago because I had read some of his short stories in some early collections, like they were called Men on Men. And so his name is Felice Picano. And so when I was getting ready to leave, I checked the notice board and I was like, oh, he's only got 8 more minutes, so I need to run up. So thankfully there was no line. And so I ran up. There's a whole panel of people. You just walk up to the person that you want to see when there wasn't a line. He had books that he was signing there. So I was happy because they said you could bring your own books and get them signed, but he had books there. And I went ahead and purchased 2 of his short story collections. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But without realizing it, I like spent all my money. So I'm wondering, do you take credit cards? And he was like, oh, well, I Zelly and Venmo and all that stuff. So it was funny because then I was able to Venmo him the money. And he went ahead and asked me if I wanted them personalized. And of course I said yes. So there we go. In case anybody wants to see my personalized Felice Picano books. And you know what? He gave me a whole bunch of stuff to, advertisements basically for his other books. I'm kicking myself because I should have got this one. This one is his famous one, Like People in History. And I should have gotten that one signed, but I'm hoping that I'm sure I could write to him and he'll sign it and send it to me. At this point, I was out of money and I had gotten the signature of the one person I wanted. There was one other. And so as I was walking out, I noticed Larry Niven's table. They were kind of setting up. And I was like, Larry Niven is like a really famous sci-fi writer. Like he's the only name that I really, really knew besides Felice Picano. And so I was like, oh, but he wasn't there yet. And I didn't see any books out yet to buy. And so as I was walking out, I kind of noticed there was a really big line. So I went to the end of it and I asked, hey, what are you in line for? And he was like, oh, we're in line for Larry Niven. I was like, okay, that makes total sense. It wasn't a huge line because it was such a small place, but it was a huge line for that place. So at that point, I mean, I'm not a person that is dying to get signatures from people. I actually have some of that guy's books, but I was like, it's time for me to go home. So that was my. Oh wait, I have one more story to tell. So near the end of the day, I was at a table and I was browsing through the books, and the guy, like there were 2 guys sitting in front of me. They were the people who owned the stand. I think they were from different stands, but they were just right next to each other. And so the one guy was holding up the book and he was like, do you know this author? And the author's name is escaping me now, but he's the one who wrote Devil in the White City. When he said that, I was like, oh, hey, I know that author. I've read Devil in the White City, and I know I've read one other book by him. And he was like, yeah, this book is really good. It's it's about the Lusitania, and it talks about how the Americans were complicit in helping that to bring in and get us into World War II or whatever. Like he was starting to talk about it. And I was like, oh, then if you recommend it, I'll definitely read it because I like some of his books. He says, but there's one thing that I don't like about this book. And I was like, oh, what is it? And he said, well, he mentions his husband, and I think and there's a picture in here. I think that's what he said. And the guy sitting next to him, he said, well, this is the 21st century, And I was at this one, I was just kind of like rolling my eyes. I was like, what? This took a really weird turn. And so I said, well, I'm out with all my students. And, because again, this is the 21st century. And he was just, the guy was just looking at me. I was just like, seriously, why would you say that in front of your customers? It was kind of a surreal way to end the day. Otherwise, I had a great day. That was the only weird thing. Everybody there was so nice and welcoming. Like I said, even some of the people getting signatures are out authors. That was my foray into the vintage paperback convention. What did you think? Did I spend too much? At least I had a budget. And I did go over it by $30 because I bought the 2 books by Felice Picano, and I Venmo'd that. But I wasn't going to just not get his signature just because I ran out of money. I was like, I felt like I should support him. He was back being openly gay and writing as openly gay when it wasn't. Well, there's a picture of him. When that must have been a hard thing to do. Like now it's almost normal, but it wasn't at the time when he was publishing his books. So I applaud him for his bravery. There you have it. What do you think of my haul? Is there anything that I got that you thought was really interesting? And as always, I want to thank all of you for the support.